By the time the family left Kent, it had grown to 11 children. We drove the long journey to Liverpool, arrived at the dock early in the morning, and boarded a beautiful luxury liner called the Empress of Scotland, which was to take us to Canada. We were given luxury accommodations, our own separate cabins, and we set out across the sea. This is the interior of one of the cabins, the dining room, the swimming pool. We were totally stunned. We'd never seen such beautiful stuff. We sailed around the tip of Ireland into the North Atlantic. We were really enjoying it. But then a huge storm. The ship seemed to stand on end at times. It rolled from side to side. The waves seemed to be 100 feet high. Everybody was sick. The captain was sick. The crew was sick. Even the doctor was sick. For some strange quirk of fate, I wasn't sick. I found it very exciting. But it went on, day after day. And after 5 days, the weather cleared and we sailed into much calmer waters. But it was cold. We had never experienced such cold in our lives. Icebergs, ice fog. Finally, we sailed into Halifax, January the 12th, 1957. Dad met us aboard the ship. We arrived at Pier 21.
Then the fog was lifting as the ship came to shore. She leaned to the port side as they pressed to see more, with eyes full of hope, holding back tears, and eyes that told tales of war. Oh, Canada, behind these dockyard walls, there's freedom to dream beyond the wire and the stars. Here on this day, a new life has begun as we first set foot on Pier 21.
We disembarked on Pier 21. It was a huge media circus. Reporters, news cameras everywhere. We finally got loaded up on the train and away we went. We'd never seen anything like it. The snow was deep. It was freezing cold. 20 to 30 degrees below Fahrenheit. It took us 3 days to go from Halifax to Toronto because the CPR was on strike. We were running out of food and patience. We sat back, watched the towns and cities of Canada slowly go by. It seemed to take forever. Finally, we arrived in Toronto, Union Station. We're met by a bagpipe band and more reporters. There was a big hullabaloo at the station. We were a little bewildered by it all. We were the largest family on record to cross the Atlantic at the time. And I guess Canada was pushing immigration. That's Colleen on the left and my sister Liz on the right. They look a little dazed. They've been through a lot. Mom gets a corsage from the welcoming committee. We marched out and went on a bus and got into the King George Hotel in Hamilton for our first night in Canada. We're finally here in Hamilton. Dad got a house on Forest Avenue. The people of Hamilton opened their hearts. The front of the house was piled high with clothes, furniture, toys, food. And we moved in and settled in. And again, we had reporters recording everything. We live near the train track, so this is a pretty common sight for us in Corktown. And unpacking. She looks pretty happy. We were all pretty happy to be here. Corktown. We were enrolled in St. Patrick's School. Went to church there. Wasn't long before Dad got himself a truck and started fixing televisions and installing antennas. And we were here, Hamilton.
Wonderful town, wonderful people, places to go, things to see. They're all in Hamilton, that's my wonderful town. Beautiful homes, schools and churches, entertainment, places to shop. My heart's in Hamilton, that's my wonderful town. Hamilton's the center of the Golden Horseshoe, giant of commerce and industry. Hamilton's the Steel City, and of course you will listen to Radio CKOC.
Wonderful harbor, beautiful mountain,
Botanical gardens, a sight to see. My love is Hamilton, that's my wonderful town. Hamilton's the hometown of the Ticats, Husky wee wee, eat 'em raw. There's the farmer's mart, and for the young at heart,
Hamilton has CKOC.
you can ride across the beach strip on the Skyway.
At McMaster you can get a degree.
Out on the bay for a sail, or on the Mohawk Trail.
You can listen to CKOC.
In Burlington and Stony Creek and Dundas, from Toronto to Niagara Falls. Welland and Galt and Kitchener agree, they like Radio CKOC. There's only one Hamilton, that's my wonderful town.
The wonderful shows on your favorite TV, Channel 11.
I think the whole city of Hamilton was excited about it.
Well, we finally arrived in Canada. There was a big blurb in the press, newspaper, the Hamilton Spectator. We went to CHCH television and had an interview there with the whole family. People came from all over and gave us all kinds of stuff, clothes, furniture, etc., etc. The house was in a nasty little neighborhood called Corktown. It's kind of a dumpy place. The house itself was overrun with beetles, mice. It was cold, cramped. When we first moved in, there was a family living upstairs, so we were all crowded into the downstairs. That lasted for about a month. And Dad had went and got himself a 1953 Pontiac sedan delivery van and started fixing televisions and installing television aerials. Tried to make a bit of money. The kids did what we could. Those the boys, we delivered newspapers, worked delivery at the drugstore, and shoveled snow, mowed lawns, whatever we could do to make a few extra bucks, and the family struggled. We didn't have any money. We were in a strange country, but we had no way to get home, and Joe often said that he was able to get the money together to come to Canada, but he was never able to get the money to go home. But while we lived on Forest Avenue, there was 3 more children were added to the family to make 14. The first was Kevin Barry, named after an Irish martyr to the cause, Edward, and Thomas. Before Thomas was born, Margaret had moved out and married her first husband, Bob Turner, or Robert Turner, and had 2 children, Christine and Susan. Bob died young, tragically at an early age. And the kids all were enrolled in St. Patrick's School, which we attended, and church and all that. And we were always made to go to church, and Dad never went, Mom never went, but we were sure made to go. And after about 5 years, we moved the house down to 139 Victoria Avenue North, near the corner of Cannon Street, another house. Dad had got himself another vehicle, which is a 1957 Ford station wagon. Drove that around like a king, thought it was great. A flashy station wagon. And at that time, the boys started going to Cathedral High School. The girls went to Cathedral Girls High School. They did some Irish dancing. The boys, Richard joined the Air Cadets, and me, I'm Neil, I was in the Sea Cadets and the Naval Reserve. The next one to move out was Richard. He moved out and married his girlfriend at the time, was Nancy McCormick. At that time they had 2 children, a pair of twins, Kevin and Darren. And Kevin died at an early age, suddenly and quite tragically, because Richard had moved to British Columbia at the time and was living out there, eventually settling in Squamish. Had a couple more children. It was Garth and Colleen, and Garth died suddenly in some kind of an accident on a logging site on Vancouver Island as a young man, which was quite tragic. Then I moved out and I married my sweetheart, Elizabeth. Her name was Doyle. She was from Mary Street in Hamilton. And I had 3 children. It was Lisa was the first. Then there was Philip and Neil Jr. They're all still around today. They're doing very well. And then Anne moved out. She married Dale Scott. And her first child, which was the first grandchild born, was Dale Jr. And she eventually had more girls later on. She had Lizanne, Leanne, and Rita Mae. And then Patricia moved, and she went to Yellowknife and met Jim Elson while he was working for the CBC. And she was a teaching career that she followed for the rest of her life, teaching elementary school. And they had 2 children. They had Jimmy and Margaret. And then Kathleen, she moved out. She married Bob Gratoli, which didn't last too long. She had 2 children. And Marie, she married, I believe it was Alec Ray, had 2 children, one of which passed away quite suddenly from cancer. She was separated at the time, and their children were living in northern Ontario. And Colleen, she married a fella called Bill Irwin and moved out west. And Bill passed away just recently from cancer. And Kevin, he married Anne Marie, had 3 children. And Eddie and Tommy. Eddie was taken from the family at a young age. He'd got in some bother with the police, and the social services became involved and decided that the best thing to do was to move the children, or move him from the house and put him into foster care, and basically never really returned to the family. He's now living in British Columbia. And the youngest, Tommy, didn't know too much about him. He got himself into some trouble too and spent a little bit of time away from home. Never really came back. I understand he has a couple of children on the west coast, living around Vancouver somewhere. So everybody's kind of scattered all over. But while they were living on Victoria Avenue, Joe became ill. He was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. Shortly after that, they decided they were going to have a holiday in Ireland. Mom had never told them what was wrong with him. So they went over to Ireland and visited the family over there on William Street, and sure enough, while they were there, all hell broke loose, and there was a huge riot. It became known as the Battle of the Bogside, which you'll see some of the clips from that in a little later. Joe participated in it, claimed that he infiltrated the ranks of the enemy and manned the barricades, which to him was going back to his roots, living on William Street and rioting and fighting every night. But he eventually came home and went on with his life. He had a few jobs that he worked at. By this time, Mum or Ann had started working down at the Hamilton General Hospital as a medical librarian, but she pursued that career for a number of years. And Joe, he basically just kept fixing televisions as much as he could, but he was starting to become obsolete. His television repair was not a big going concern at the time. And one night he went to the club, which was the Wellington House at the corner of Cannon and Wellington. It was a few blocks from the house, and as he normally did, have a few beers and shoot some snooker or whatever. He was a very good snooker player. And he never came home. And when Mum went to search for him, found him at the police station, and the police had found him sitting in his vehicle at the back of the house, which is an empty lot over on West Avenue. And took him up, and it smelled a bit of beer on him, I suppose, and thought he was drunk, and took him up and put him in a cell at the police station. Of course, when they came in the morning and they could not rouse him and they knew something was wrong with him, they sent him to the hospital. So he'd suffered from a very severe stroke. Debilitated him. He became bedridden. And kept him at home, looked after him and nursed him as best she could, which she was very good at. And she sold the house on Victoria Avenue and bought another house up on Stone Church Road in Hamilton. And Joe finally, after a couple of years in bed, Joe finally wasted away, and he finally had a heart attack and passed away in 1976. So at that time, Mom decided she was going to live her life, and she went to Lake Worth, Florida, and spent a number of years down there looking after some old guy on the Intercoastal Waterway, which is a kind of a very affluent area down in Lake Worth. And I guess after a number of years, the old fella got passed away, and she came back to Hamilton, got herself an apartment, and lived there for a number of years, and spent a lot of her time at the Senior Citizens Club in downtown Hamilton. Sadly, one day she broke her hip and she fell. She had a lot of trouble with that. Eventually ended up getting a hip replacement done, which helped her a lot. But she had a lot of fun when she was at the club. She was in the Geritol Follies, which is a group of entertainers that run around doing entertainment. And eventually she became a little too old to be participating in much of that anymore, so she finally moved out to Burlington and lived in a condominium, nice modern new condominium that Margaret and Keith had bought and allowed her to stay in. She remained there up until 2000, 2010, and eventually became sick and was taken and lived with Patricia and Jim Elson at their house for a short period of time, and finally was taken to the Brantford General Hospital, where she passed away from the effects of cancer. I should mention that one person I forgot was Ambrose. Ambrose had gone out west. He'd been suffering from seizures all his life, and got into an accident out there, a vehicle accident, which broke his neck. He went through all the rehabilitation. He was paralyzed for the latter part of his life from the neck down, but he did manage to get himself a master's degree in computer technology. He just suddenly passed away one day in his apartment, in his wheelchair, and that was the end of Ambrose. God bless him. Anyways, the family's moved on since that time. We've grown, and children keep coming. There's many children, and they're spread all over the place, from Nova Scotia to British Columbia. Anne being the one that lives in Nova Scotia with her children, Leanne, Liz, and all that. My sister Liz had got married again. She first of all married Wally Nestick, which she had one daughter, Raquel, and ended up in a divorce, and eventually married Tom Sidorkowicz, who she's with today, and she's got some lovely children. There's Tommy, who we call Wee Tommy Tootie Moose, and Raquel, and of course, and Sonia. And they live in Hamilton today, and Liz is a nurse. I believe that Tom is retired now. He was in some kind of an air handling business. The Hart family moved from Scotland with Mom's sister Kate, who had married Peter Hart, had moved to Hamilton sometime around 1960, and brought with her 16 children, and broke the record of Mom coming across with 11. They arrived in Hamilton and were given a big reception at the Royal Connaught Hotel, which we all attended, which was the first and only time that the family had been all together under one roof at the same time, which was quite remarkable. I don't think it's ever happened since, not that I can remember. And then there's Joe. Joe married Beverly Eng, believe she had 6 children by a previous marriage, and she had 3 more with Joe, and they were Joseph Paul, Paula Josephine, and Josephine Paula. And they're all still alive today. Joe sadly passed away a couple of years ago from the effects of cancer. He had got a melanoma on his back, which eventually got to him, I guess, and he passed away.
The girl says, we're going to work hard and give you the money back. That's the kind of girls we've got working for us. Thank you, dear.
That little clip was Neil Murray, who is Ann's brother. He lived on the Hamilton Mountain, passed away since, and that was his son Neil getting up on the stage at an event that was taking place at the Royal Canadian Legion on the Hamilton Mountain. He had some children. He had Neil, who was a television repairman himself, and was quite a singer and was in a band. Thomas was in politics. He was an alderman in Hamilton for many years. Marion, who was passed away at a young age from cancer, and Catherine, who is still around today. Now this little film we took of Ambrose was taken to the Senior Citizen Center where Mum used to go all the time. Joe was an avid racer, raced stock cars for many years. Picture of Ann in the younger years. My 2 sons, both martial artists, quite good at it. And of course Ann and her mother, and one of the few surviving pictures we have of her. And this is my wife Elizabeth, who passed away after 32 years of marriage from a brain tumor, and my grandchildren. And this is Ann, Donald Stewart, her brother Peter, and his wife. And after Joe passed away, Mum had taken his ashes and taken them back to Ireland and spread them out over the River Foyle in Londonderry, so I guess Joe finally did go home. When she passed away, her ashes were taken to the Bayview Memorial Crematorium and Cemetery in Hamilton, and her ashes were spread in the flower garden. This next video clip is of the 3 sisters, Anne, Kate, and Emily, speaking about the family history. So listen up.
You know, and me. Do you know they used to sing that on the show? On the radio. On the BBC in England. It was a comedy show. Don't be too cold. Right, you've got to interview Catherine.
Okay, Catherine. Well, should just say these are 3 sisters. This is Catherine. Where do you fall in the family, Catherine?
What
The
do I
oldest,
need
the
to
youngest?
minister to say the boss? She's in the middle? The 10. And there's the... Margaret Richmond. Oh, I go into my family. There's Peter, Maggie, Mary, Sadie, Lodge, and Kate was 6. 6.
6. And how many was there in the family altogether?
10.
10?
I was at 10.
This is a clip of the Battle of the Bogside where Dad had gone with Mum. This took place right in his neighborhood, right in front of his door. Like he said, all the trouble in Ireland started at their front door.
Then there was...
Auntie Maggie.
When was Peter born?
Well, he was 19 years older than me. I was born in 1926. And he was born on the 9th of December. I was born on the 23rd, so you'll need to calculate it for
1901 or
yourself.
something like that, right? And then who's next?
Maggie.
Margaret. And when was she born?
I don't know Maggie's date of birth. Did
She
you?
was the 4th, wait a minute, she's the 4th of June, it's the 4th of May rather.
4th of May.
That would be 2 years before that.
2 years after Peter.
No, she was, I was 8 when she got married,
21?
she was 19, she was 11 years older than me.
11 years older than me. What year were you born?
1920.
So that makes it 21. That's what I was guessing. May 1921.
You were born in 21?
No,
I was
that
born
can't
in
be
20.
20,
And
so she's
Peter
old.
was
Okay,
17.
09.
That'd be
09. 1909. All right. And then who? After that?
Mary.
Mary.
As far as I know, there was 2 years between them, but Mary was it the 14th of February? I know it was no, 14 Valentine's Day. She was born on,
she
she was
knows
born
Valentine's
just
Day.
after it.
Yeah, Valentine's. Because Johnny Richards was Valentine's Day.
And Jenny was the 12th.
Jenny was a day either before or after it.
Well, I'd close it up, say the 15th.
Right. 15th of what?
And take 2 years off.
May.
15th. We've had 2 years on to your last day.
Okay, 1911. 15th of May 1911, say
No, she was born in
For
February.
Mary.
for February. For Mary.
Mary.
15th of February 1911 for Mary.
Do you know when she died?
Yeah, do you know what she died?
Margaret McCallum could tell you, Neil,
Yeah,
but
we'll get that.
I'm no
Yeah,
good at
I
remembering
don't know, I
names.
don't remember.
I
I know it's a good time
So
ago.
who's next after? Next?
Sadie?
Sadie.
Sadie?
Well, she died when she was 77, that was 2 years ago.
Mary was 60 when she died.
Yeah, well, I didn't need her, so it
2
was-
years ago?
Year anyway, you only need.
Ah, well, you could work it out, Neil,
You only need.
because she was going to be 60 on her birthday. When she died before her 60th birthday, she died, I think, around about October, November-ish. So
years
Mark
ago?
McCallum
71.
probably be able to tell you better.
2 years? 2 years ago she died?
No, that was your Auntie Sadie.
71.
Oh, 71
She died 2 years ago.
Mary, that was, it was Mary that died in 71. Was that who you were working out?
Aye, but Sadie was 77 when she died 2 years ago, so 79 years ago. 93, I'm no good at cooking. I've lost the fact.
Oh, I-
Lost the track, okay. I think I can work it out. It's around 1912 anyway.
Aye.
13 she was born. Okay, who's next?
Lottie.
Lottie. About her?
She was born on the 13th of November 1918.
Okay, and is she still alive today?
No, Lottie
When
died.
did she died?
And a year before
The year you remember you came over a year early. It's
My
67th, 69th birthday.
Uh-huh.
She died just before that. Well, she died just
She just
after
took,
that.
yeah,
because
she had just took.
she died in November, I think. She died later that year.
What was the cause of death?
Cancer.
Cancer.
Mary
Your Auntie
died.
Mary died of
Yeah,
cancer
so
as well.
that was 87, no, 89. Died in 89.
Aye.
All right, so who's next?
Me.
Okay, what's
I was born on the 8th of June 1920.
June 1920? Okay, who's next?
Annie.
18th of November 1921. Exactly a year, 5 months, and 10 days.
5 months, 10 days.
Okay, then who's next?
Neil.
Neil.
Neil is
Is the 14th
3
of
years, the 14th of August. And he was 69, is 7, yeah, it'll be
It'll be
69,
70
right,
in
it'll be 70 in his birthday.
In August.
70
It was
in
70
August.
this
70
year.
this year, so
So
that'll make it
23.
1923.
23. Aye, and then there's Johnny.
He was May, he was
And
the
14th of
A
May.
year and a half between him and
Cindy is Katie, and my Katie's the 14th.
the 14th.
24. Yeah, would have been. May 24 he was born. I was born December 26. Maybe it was 25. The 25 for Johnny.
At the 25.
Because by year and, you know, he's more than a year older than me, but not quite 2 years older than me.
Yeah, that's right.
He's in Australia.
Yeah.
All right, and then who's next?
Me. And I was born the 23rd of December 1926.
Any more?
That's them all.
That's them all.
That's 10.
Okay, now we're gonna get to the hard stuff. Now we're gonna start at the top again. What's the oldest fellow's name?
Peter.
Peter. Okay, that's.
No, that's my brother,
Oh, that's your
Peter.
brother.
The one that lived in Scotland.
Okay, your brother. Did he ever marry?
Yeah.
Who did he marry?
He married Catherine McCallum.
Catherine McCallum. Did they have children?
So two boys,
Do you know their names?
Peter and Andrew Gerald.
Peter and Andrew Gerald. And
And
I
Kat
guess-
was 15 when Peter was born.
Peter was the oldest, I can't remember. Wait a minute, it was just young during the Clydebank Blitz.
Give me a minute. I was
He was 3
15.
when the fight went.
I was 15 when he was born. And I was born in 21, so he would be born in 36.
He was 3 when the
Queen
war
Elizabeth was,
That was
was just
That's
before the
right.
Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mary, just before the Queen Mary was launched, she was born.
1936 he was born. I know that because I was working for the Youngs then. And I
Who was born?
I went to see
Peter
him.
Conley, or Peter, your Uncle Peter's oldest son.
Okay, in 1936 he had a son.
And then Andrew Gerald. And he was 50 just a few weeks ago. I
And
couldn't
he's-
tell you the exact date, but it was
Okay,
50
they
just a
married?
few weeks. He's married and he's got 3 girls.
He's got 3 girls. Do you know their names?
Karen, Fiona and Kirsty.
This is all Murray.
No, they're
My mother was
Conleys.
married twice. Her name's
Okay.
Conley.
They're all Conleys.
All right. I guess they're not married or anything yet, that crew.
No, they're none of them married
Not
yet,
yet.
no.
They're still too young here.
One of them's working in Queen
What
Elizabeth.
was Peter's wife's name?
Cathy McCall.
Catherine.
Oh, young
Catherine
Peter's
McCall.
wife.
No, your brother.
Aye, she was
Catherine
Cathy
McCall.
McCall.
Where did she come from?
Link House. But they actually came from,
Well, her mother came from Eastdale,
our mother
but they
came
stayed
from
in
Lynn.
Lindhouse.
the north of Scotland,
North
but
of
they
Scotland.
stayed in Glasgow.
She was born in Glasgow. Born
What
in
did
Glasgow.
what did Peter do for a living? What kind of stuff did he do?
He did all sorts of things, but he finished up as a postmaster up at Eastdale.
Okay.
You know,
He
to
was
be
a
tiny
carpenter,
post
he was
office.
by trade.
You know, he was a jack of all trades kind of thing.
See, he was the one that was telling you about the work for 10 years in Templeton's carpet factory got fired. And with the depression, he did whatever he could get.
Sure.
Yeah. And then when the war broke out, he was an air raid warden and then he was in the Air Force. And he was discharged medically from the Air Force. He was supposed to have nephritis because he had had blood in his urine or something. And when instead of coming back and living in Glasgow, they went up to live in Easdale Island. And the family went up there. And of course, at that time, the war was still on and the bombing and everything, so they went up to the island. And he was postmaster, fisherman, caught lobsters.
He was never deposed as well, and
They call it
newspaper.
an entrepreneur.
And he was
that's what it
also,
They never made money
I
out
have
of
to
it.
mention this, Neil, he was also a candidate for the Scottish Nationalist Party. He ran for Parliament. He was never elected because they were very small, but he was and he worked endlessly
Why,
for the
he was the
Nationalist
organiser
Party.
for Argyll.
I have a thing that I'll give you that was in the Open Times with the whole story about Peter, and I'll give that to you because you can use that.
Did Kathy send it to your daughters as well?
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
I'm gonna move along here. There's a lot of people in this story.
Yeah.
Who's the next? Okay, who's the next oldest?
Maggie.
Right, did she marry?
Yes.
John Richards.
John Richards, and children?
Yeah, she had children. Her first daughter, Margaret,
Died when she was 3 years of age.
Margaret died. Then there was Mary,
Jenny,
Jim,
Sadie,
Matt,
John,
Mark,
and
Mark,
How many kids is that?
Matthew, Mark, John.
Margaret, Mary, Jenny, Jim, Sadie, Matt, John and Anne.
No,
Eight.
John was older than that.
I know I've got in the wrong
Well,
order,
that's
but
okay.
John
As long as
came
we get
after.
the names.
Doesn't matter about that.
Right, so, and I imagine, well,
The only thing that's missing there is Luke.
yeah.
Matthew, Mark, John.
Okay, now they all got married.
Yes, they all got married.
All right, who did they get married to? You know their
Now,
name?
Mary's first husband, Margaret died, of
Bramble,
course.
his name was
Aye, it was Leo Bramble was her first husband. Her second husband, I can't mind his name.
I never ever knew
Okay,
him.
well,
Oh, aye,
all right.
he had a business in
An
London.
antique
Oh, aye, he did
business. They
very
live
well.
in Canterbury now.
Oh, yeah.
Mark McCallum will tell you his name,
Yeah,
but I can't quite remember it.
Margaret's the librarian in the family.
Oh, I
She
should be
had
talking to
a
her.
son.
Yeah,
She had a son to Leo Bramble. He was called Jimmy Bramble.
that's right. And everything.
And then she
he
had a wee girl,
tomato
her
ketchup
second
on it.
husband.
You must remember
remember
Jimmy
her name.
Bramble. The
That's
boy
so-
that came to Kent.
Oh, God,
And
how you
the
should
only
do.
thing.
Oh, ketchup.
Ketchup and everything, yeah.
All right.
I did remember.
All right, so who's the next oldest now?
That was-
Mary,
Mary?
aye,
That
She
was
married?
she had
She married
What's
Hugh
her marriage?
Johnson.
why,
first.
Hugh Johnson
Hugh
first
Johnson,
of
all
all.
right.
And Hugh Graham Johnson.
Steve Graham Johnson.
Aye. And they had a son, Hugh Graham Johnson, Tom,
Peter. Peter.
Peter came
Peter
next,
and
that's
David.
right.
Because I delivered them.
David
David.
and Margaret, 5, that's right.
5.
Aye.
Okay, so,
Now, Hugh married a girl called Winnie, what was Winnie's second? That's another name Mark McCallum will supply.
Yeah,
She
I
knows
don't
the second
know.
name,
Okay.
Winnie's second.
I knew the girl. Peter
Aye.
used to deliver.
I
Used
was
to
My
come
Peter
into my
used
house
to deliver
regularly,
papers
right.
to
well, I
our
can't
mail.
remember, it's just better to move on, you know.
Aye, that's right.
You know,
Um,
all right, so,
and she had,
Sadie was
there's all girls he had.
Yeah.
He's good to get, there's,
Yeah, but he says if you don't remember them,
I don't
just leave
remember
it and
the-
we'll
the
get-
three
he
girls.
can edit it, you see.
they had 3 girls. The names are in my head now, so just go on then.
yeah, just go on. All right, so
And-
we'll get on to the next oldest.
Sadie
Sadie. Who was her married to?
McCallum,
Sadie
she
McCallum.
married to Andrew
Who-
McCallum.
Andrew McCallum. She had children.
One girl.
One Margaret.
Margaret
Margaret?
McCallum.
Oh, that was the Margaret who was here?
Yeah. And that was the brother to Kathy McCallum, who married Peter. So there was a double connection
Okay,
there.
right, now. We're getting into the knots now, aren't we?
It's very confusing.
Yeah, it is for me because I don't know these
You
people
don't know
by this
these
name.
people.
you
I
know.
know
Then
you
it was
don't.
Lottie was the next.
Lottie's
She
next,
married Donald Robertson Stewart.
right?
Then she went on to marry a Peter Jory. But she had
4 boys.
4 boys. Donald,
Charles
Charles
Gordon,
Edwards.
Ian, Charles.
Charles Gordon and Ian.
That's right.
All right,
I've got photos.
right. Okay, so who's the next after that?
Me.
Kate Ryan, you know, she's got 14.
All right, now we're gonna need the names of them too.
The oldest
Hart.
one is John.
You're married to Peter Hart first.
Peter Hart.
Peter Hart.
And then John.
Wait a minute, what's Peter's birthday, by the way?
Well, Peter was born in June the 19th, 1918.
Okay. He's out on the porch right now.
Yeah. They asked him,
Okay.
they asked
Are
him
you-
when did Andy die.
Yeah.
That's why he's saying.
He's sitting in the porch now. Right,
Yeah, okay, so now you've had children.
John.
Can you name them?
And he's got 2 girls.
Okay,
Married
what's his wife's name?
Oh, wait, Janice Kovashev.
Okay.
And Margaret, she married twice. Neil McPhail first and Hugh Upper. And a boy and a girl, Neil McPhail. Scott, Neil Scott and Catherine Marion.
Okay, so the next one is?
Me.
No, the next child.
Next week.
Child.
Well, the next range.
You started off with Margaret.
Oh, Margaret. The next
Johnny
one's
Margaret,
Neil.
Neil.
He's got 3 boys, 2 marriages.
Okay.
One boy to his first wife, her surname was Maureen Cassidy,
Okay.
and married Isabel Saint.
You had another child from
she,
your girlfriend?
she had another 2 boys after her. The first boy was Stephen Maureen, and the 2, John,
Second one is
Brian and John.
Brian and John. There's a lot of people with this. Okay,
No,
you were talking about your kids. We've done Neil. Who's next?
Neil, the next one is Roderick, and
Roderick.
he married wait a minute to get this down.
I've got the wedding
What
invitations anyway, you know, so
Right.
get that information.
Castellana.
Castellana, yeah.
Okay.
And
He
they
has
have 4
children?
girls.
They have 4 girls. Their names?
Amanda, Marina, Danielle, and Bernadette.
All right. So after Roderick, who's next?
Peter.
Peter. Is he married?
Peter, he's married. He's got 3 girls to Sandy Montgomery.
Sandy Montgomery. 3
And
girls.
there's 3 girls and 1 boy.
Okay.
Tara, Kimmy, Whitney, and Peter the third. Peter Joseph the third.
Jeez. Okay, so that's Peter. Now who's next?
Raymond. Raymond got married to Madeline Waters. And she has 2 girls and 2 boys. Laurie is the oldest. Diane, Robert, and Raymond.
Okay. So who's after? Okay, who's the next
Brian.
post after Raymond? Brian.
Brian has he had what's Janet's name? I can't remember her name.
We'll get that later.
Just move on then.
Well,
Does
she
have
she
children?
had she had 4 boys and 1 girl, but one of the boys died when 10 weeks old. So the first one was Brian, the second one was Christopher, the third one was Mark, and then she had Kathleen and Peter.
Okay. So who's next? The next oldest of your kids after that?
Jared, and he has he was married in his first marriage. He didn't have any family. I can't remember what the name was.
What was the name? So he married again?
No, he married again,
What's
and
her
he's
name?
got 3 children. She had a wee boy, but Jared adopted him.
Okay.
There's 3 boys and a girl. Sean, Ryan, well, there was just 3. Sean, Ryan, and Megan.
All right. Keep going now. Who's the next
Now
one?
the next one is Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin, he married Jean. Oh, that's stupid.
It's not.
Shetland?
What's her first name?
It was on the house, and then we saw it the other day.
What's her first name?
Jean.
Jean.
Jean Bar, whatever.
Bar.
No, it's not. That's a middle name.
All right. Well, that doesn't
Sammy,
matter.
what was the name of the guy that kicked Johnny Thompson in the head? Sammy.
English.
Sammy English.